welcome to Code and Color, the home for all things animation and video games. Today we've been putting this off for ages, this episode, but we are finally going to be talking about it, and it is the recently released The Boy and The Heron. It came out at the back end of 2023, and Josh and I saw it about 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and we've been dying to talk about it, but we just had some other things that we needed to get out of the way before we talked about it with you all. We're going to be diving into Hayao Miyazaki's latest masterpiece with Studio Ghibli, and that is The Boy and the Heron. Joshua, what did you think?
I thought it was a decent film. Yeah, mm-hmm. I thought it was a tad too long.
Okay,
that was my main sort of takeaway. I was like, it was very, very engaging. I liked it. I liked the art style. The story was phenomenal. It was very well animated. It was just a tad too long, but other than that, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. I think I agree. And Josh and I shared a very similar thought when we finished watching it, which was the problem with seeing, because this is the first time I've actually got a chance to see a Ghibli film in the cinema, and it's quite the honour to do so. And the problem with seeing a film like that in the cinema, especially when you've both both been at work all day, is they're far too peaceful. This film wasn't boring by any stretch of imagination. They're just they're very peaceful films, and I was getting a bit heavy-eyed watching it. But it's not because it's boring. It's because you just are relaxed watching this film. It's not a very stressful film to watch, as most Ghibli films aren't really. And we've mentioned it before when we talked about Ghibli in the past. You know, these are films designed. He's always made films designed for children, and with that, I think comes the lack of stress. I really enjoyed it. It's very Ghibli. The characters are very sort of, I don't know, exaggerated. One thing I love trend wise within Ghibli films is old people always have got massive heads and big noses.
Yeah.
Always. It's very similar, very, very reminiscent of kind of Spirited Away with that vibe. But no, really enjoyed it. Stellar cast for the UK version, or the English version. So it's worth mentioning that Josh and I went to watch the dubbed version, which, if you know me, usually I'm very opposed to, but we went to it. And the reason we did go to it is because I wanted to see Robert Pattinson voicing the Heron, and to which he does so. I was not expecting that, but I'll reel off some of the cast that we have in that film. In fact, Josh, I'll let you do that because you've got them in front of you.
We have the little indie actor under a couple of roles.
You'll always find a way to do that.
Yeah, Mr. Christian Bale. You know, he's just been about a little bit. You know, not really that famous.
I don't think that's his first Ghibli film either, is it, Bale? I'm pretty sure he's in the UK version of. Oh, actually, I don't know. Don't correct me on that. Go on, carry on.
To be fair, I do agree with you. He has done another Ghibli film. I can't remember which one it is, but I'm 99% sure.
I'm going to.
He plays what's his name? Mahito's father.
He's
Dave Bautista.
He's Howl in Howl's Moving Castle.
There we go. I was going to say, yeah.
It was my
and then we've got Dave Bautista, who plays the Parakeet King, which was instantly recognizable. Just by his whole mannerisms, it was like he was walking into a WWE ring. It was just like, that's Dave Bautista, instantly. And then we had Gemma Chan. She played Natsuko / Hisako. I apologize.
Yeah, so Mahito's mum and his auntie.
Yes, and then the ever reliable Willem Dafoe.
The Pelican.
Noble Pelican, yeah. And then Karen Fukuhara, who plays Lady Hime, which is...
She's the sailor, right? That's somebody else.
Lady Hime is...
Oh, is she not one of the...
Is she the daughter? The one that helps him? Go through the doors. No. Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe.
yes. I
Yes.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mark Hamill. I mean, the one of the greatest voice actors of our generation.
There again, what was annoying about him is I knew his voice, but I couldn't. I was like, oh my god, who is it? Who is it? I was like, and I've heard this actor voice act before, and I was like, I know who it is. And it wasn't until afterwards I was like, I need to look up who that was, and it was, of course, Mark Hamill, which I think is credit to him because I couldn't like. It was like Willem Dafoe or Dave Bautista, like it was very obviously them. Whereas Mark Hamill, I think he's an actor, but he's also a very credible voice actor as well. And that is kind of go on. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, absolutely fine.
Yeah, and I think that. Oh, you got more to say?
No, go.
Is there more cast?
There is more cast. Yes.
Go on, you carry on with the cast first.
Cast is fine. So I got Luca Padovan, who plays Mahito. He's the young lad, the boy
He's the protagonist of our film.
Yeah, he's not been in much, but I enjoyed him. Listening to the voice, it was great. Yeah. Robert Pattinson, little unknown actor, been in a couple.
Well,
of things.
Yeah, I think he was the other one I was going to comment on. Like, if you hadn't known it was him watching it, you wouldn't know. You just wouldn't know it was him.
I had no idea all the way through the film. Like no idea at all. Yeah. When he was talking about Willem Dafoe, I thought Willem Dafoe played two parts.
No,
because for our viewers, Robert Pattinson plays the Grey Heron, the heron of the story, and I promise you now, that's not him. Like it just doesn't
fantastic.
Sound like him at all.
I think
it was a great voice.
Honestly, I come out of that going, I think Robert Pattinson should definitely explore a career in voice acting. But then again, I think he's a very underrated actor anyway. I think the trouble is, it's the same with Kristen Stewart. I think they both fall under that bracket of being Twilight's main stars, that they kind of haven't been given enough credibility. And he's gone on to do wonderful things. And, Ghibli is no exception here. Like, The Boy and the Heron, his role in this is phenomenal. Like, things like that annoys me when it comes to the Oscars, that they don't have a voice acting nomination, because that for me, that is a credible, like, I would vote for that for that. If there was a voice acting option, 100%. I would give that to him.
And another one that was in this the casting list, the final one, is Florence Pugh.
Yeah, so she was the sailor.
No idea. No idea at all.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Go on. No, you carry on.
And I think, like, off the back of your voice acting talent with giving the awards for these things, I mean, it worked out well for Luke Skywalker. Like, he being Luke Skywalker obviously set him up for life, but really his best work, and most of his best work, is voice acting. Be it
I think
Avatar,
a lot of people would argue that as well.
Be it Batman as well. He's done video games. He's done, and he's even done parts of Invincible. His voice acting is phenomenal. And like Robert Pattinson, like if Batman don't work for you, mate, go be a voice actor. Florence Pugh, same, do it. Because Chris Pratt's in everything, and I'd rather have you two.
Well, it's just annoying. It is annoying, isn't it, when Chris Pratt is picking up all these roles in voice acting, and he's not doing anything in terms of. There's no, I don't know. There's no diversity to his roles. Like, it's just. Go on. You're looking at me. You're giving me a weird
I'm just saying. Have we? I'm giving you a weird look. I was like, have we had the discussion about Garfield yet? Because he's playing Garfield and he sounds.
Well, I think we've mentioned it on here before. But and I'm just,
why?
I don't know. But Garfield, live action Garfield, or any Garfield movie will always be Bill Murray to me. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I find it frustrating when Chris Pratt is picking up all these animated voicing roles, and he's just being Chris Pratt, fine. If that is, I don't even know if that's a dig at Chris Pratt. Like, I do think he has enough star power to be able to sway what it is he does, like how he voices him. I think he gets away with it with Mario a little bit, because in terms of tone inflection, when it comes to Mario, I kind of expect him to sound like that if he was just some English bloke. Um, but Garfield is like a very kind of like lazy, sort of suave sounding cat, really.
Yeah.
Where again, it's just Bill Murray to me, and whoever done it previously. But and I just know that they're going. Chris Pratt, he's a little bit too charismatic, I think, that I don't think he is Garfield. But I could be wrong. We'll see, right? Because I had my doubts about him in Super Mario, and I did end up enjoying Super Mario despite all its flaws.
Yeah.
And then back to my point, then you have, the cast of The Boy and the Heron. And to be honest, any of the Ghibli films, for some reason, Hayao Miyazaki seems to bring out the best in voice actors for his films. And I think that is credit due to his how much he cares about the product.
Yeah. No,
He
I
wants his
agree.
films to be, you know, it's an event. When a Ghibli film drops, it's an event, right? In our world, in the animation industry, which we obviously are very passionate about over here, look, that's a big moment in cinema. And honestly, Robert Pattinson blew me away the same way Mark Hamill probably blew people away when he voiced the Joker way back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Like, just off the back of giving props to our Pats for the role. I mean, he could have just come in and just done, growly Batman voice,
Yeah,
whatever. He could have just been Robert Pattinson, and I'd be like, oh yeah, Robert Pattinson, cool. You've done a little bit of an acting thing, but he sounds like a 90-year-old man. It's like it's just so unrecognizable that
it's quite
you
sinister.
could have, yeah, you could have literally got anyone that sounded anywhere near the Heron to do that voice, but then you brought Robert
Yeah,
Patterson in, and he's gone. Actually, I've got a voice for this guy, and this is what I'm going to do. And it just killed it, just absolutely annihilated it, and
yeah, I agree.
it just felt like he didn't need to do it, and the fact that he did, like, it shows his acting prowess, his talents, and like you say, like Miyazaki, um, pulling out a cast and just getting them to give their best
Yeah,
performances, and
I think
it was
it's
an event. Like when we went to see it, it was like seeing like any other animated film, like Lightyear
yeah.
or like any other sort of like big budget like Pixar film. I
Well,
sat there and I
when
sat
Pixar
down and
used to
thinking
feel
this
like
is
an
an
event
event.
because they used to drop only like
Yeah,
once a year or every other year. I used to be like, oh my god, the latest Pixar.
yeah,
Now we're getting like a lot of hot drops, and like going to the cinema the other week to see this and seeing that blue Studio Ghibli card come up at the start of the movie. I was like, this is so exciting! Like, I can't believe I'm seeing a Ghibli film in cinema. And the
mm,
voice acting cast, like, just back on that. I know we've spent a lot of time on this right now, but they they always pull out a stellar voice cast for the English dub version. In obviously with the Japanese cast, unfortunately, I'm not familiar with kind of like the star power on that side of things, so I'm not familiar with like if they are big stars in that part of the world. They very much could
mm,
be, but for what I know, the Ghibli films and the English versions of them, they pull out this voice cast, and what they haven't what they with that, usually when you get star power, you kind of think, it doesn't matter. We've got the star power behind it. We don't need to like put
mm,
so much effort in. But they really draw the most out of these actors, like they're not just here to, they actually feels like they're putting a performance and it feels like they care about it. And my only reasoning for that is because of Ghibli's success. I feel like a lot of these actors really want to work on a Ghibli film. I mean, it must be
mm.
why Bale has come back because
Oh yeah,
you know, I mean, Howl's movie. He plays Howl, and Howl is a phenomenal character in Howl's Moving Castle. Um, and Bale plays a phenomenal character in this one as well. He plays the dad, right?
mm.
He
Would
plays
would
Mahito's dad.
would you say that having a great cast in your film makes your film just that slightly better? I'm thinking about Elemental
But I
here.
think this is the point I'm trying to make, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to just rely on star power for it to be a great film.
Mm,
Um, and like I said, I feel like he draws a real performance out. I feel like they were quite selective with their process because Mark Hamill,
mm,
whilst he is a big actor, isn't. I wouldn't say is an A-list actor these days. Like
mm.
maybe he might have come back onto the scene a bit more because of the sequel trilogy to Star Wars, but
Little
and
Big
he obviously did a
Project.
brief return to the Mandalorian or Star Wars with the Mandalorian.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but he is a credible voice actor. Like, and you know, he has done phenomenal work with voice acting with Lord Ozai in Avatar, and with the Joker in the animated Batman
Mm.
series. So, on games as well. Go on.
No, I was just thinking, like, go off the back of your point is, I think that the cast complement this film, but I don't think they're the reason we go see this film.
No, I
We go
think the
see this
Ghibli
because it's Ghibli, yeah,
is Ghibli.
and
Like
they
they
make
are
it
a
better.
studio that it's like this is a Studio Ghibli film. It's the same with like like we were just saying with Pixar. Pixar are one of those studios that back in the day I was like, there's a reason I did a lot of my university work around Pixar as well because they they,
Mm.
they were such an inspiring studio, but then they just everything just gets Disneyfied, and which is interesting because
Mm.
Ghibli, a lot of their UK and American distribution, we've spoken about this in the past, was done by Disney. I think Ghibli have obviously been able to keep a hold of a lot,
Yeah.
and they don't, and they've remained true to themselves. I don't think they've ever dipped in quality, especially when Miyazaki is behind the project, because he gets
Mm.
Joe Hisaishi, who has done all of the score for pretty much every single Miyazaki Ghibli film. Not all of the Ghibli films, but any of the
Mm.
Miyazaki ones, Joe Hisaishi has done all of the score, and his music is just so wonderful. Like it
Peaceful.
really tells a story. Like
Yeah.
even if this was a silent film, it really tells a story through his music.
Mm.
Um, and like I feel like you get, like I always feel like I get transcended whenever I listen to his music because I don't understand where he does it, where he pulls these sounds from. Um, it's very kind of like each film when you watch it, he's scored it. He, it feels, it feels very like modern, but also
Mm.
very classic Ghibli at the same time. Like I feel like he's moving with the times by also staying true to themselves. You can just tell a lot of love goes into these films, and that's why I really like going to see them. So that on that alone, I would recommend going to see this film. But yeah,
I
there's a
think
lot to be said about it.
yeah, I think just on a final point with like the a comparison I could sort of give with this film is I kind of see this film like Disney's Lion King in a sense of like Disney came out, did an animation, got relatively unknown people. Like they weren't massively, there were a few that were, quite big. Like you got Matthew Broderick, Jeremy Irons, a few decent voice casts. But basically, you went for the film because it was a beautifully animated film, and then the voice cast sort of complemented that. And I think I got the same sort of vibe with this. Like you went to see it because it's a Studio Ghibli film, and then the voice cast then complemented on top of that, and it just made it made
Yeah,
whatever you were already viewing a better experience. It made like it just that little cherry on top. Like it probably is phenomenal in the original Japanese version, and
I do want to watch it
subtitles.
subbed.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that, but I think that because he was selective, because he did what because he chose the people that he chose and worked with other people that he's worked before, I think it complemented the film, and they all just knocked it out of the park. But my question I want to pose to you, my friend,
Go for it.
is what did you think of the animation?
Clean, right? It's I just haven't. It just I was thinking about this, especially at the beginning when the so
Yeah.
spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. There's a very traumatic scene at the start of the film where the main character loses his mother to a hospital fire. That
Mm.
particular scene where he's moving through the crowd of people, it just was it was almost like it was surreal, but almost felt really real at the same time.
Yeah.
Like it was I don't know. I don't know if because traditionally in anime, and obviously Ghibli would probably scold me for calling them anime, but
Mm.
traditionally in let's say Japanese animation, they move at 3 frames, like every 3 frames, like there's a new image every 3 frames. It didn't feel like it was doing that in this one. I feel like they kind of went to a bit of a westernized sort of 2 frames because
Mm.
Mojito was moving really fluidly, and it just but with that sort of art style of Ghibli that I was like, whoa, whoa, like this is it was beautiful. And then later into the film when Mojito kind of transcends into the next world to find his mother slash auntie as well. Um, it's all very colourful and surreal. Just it was. I think it's just magical. Like, I've watched a lot of his films, and you can kind of see the evolution of the animation. I feel like you have
Mm.
some thoughts that might vary to mine, but I'm intrigued.
No, I enjoyed it. It took me back to watching like Tarzan in the cinema. Like the animation was clean, it was very well done. It was it was engaging. I was enthralled all the way through. The fire scene at the beginning was fabulous. The standouts for me though were like the tracking shots or the panning shots of like backgrounds,
Mm,
and like trying to work out like in my mind like,
yeah,
oh, we tried to do animations and we tried to do things like that. And like if he was doing, like say he was going up a cave or going up a pathway, like how does he do that? Like if he's going
yeah.
up a
You can,
wall, does he have the whole image and then like animate it in a way that it looks up
yeah,
that way, or is it? I just it was just trying to get my mind around it was throwing me off so much, but it was just so phenomenally well done. And yeah,
yeah. You can kind
standouts,
of
fire,
see
water, everything was great.
you can kind of see when you're watching them which bits of the frame are going to be animated because they're kind of in a different
Yeah, yeah,
style to
yeah.
so a lot of his backgrounds are obviously very much paintings and they're phenomenal,
Mm,
right? And they Ghibli have this style and it's a bit of a trope that they use often where certain images will be in the frame will look different, so that there's a lot more focus on them. There'll be a lot more line work on, like for example there's an image where Mojito is in a bedroom and the background is painted, but he's obviously
mm,
moving, so he's in a particular style, and the bed as well is of the same style as Mojito, which kind of indicates that that's a focus point, a focal point for that shot, and
mm,
that it's likely going to move. And it's, I think what it kind of like, if there's one thing to learn from that kind of art style, is it's don't put too much focus on trying to make everything move because all you want to do is
mm.
draw attention to the bits that need to move, and the rest will feel like it's coming alive anyway.
Yeah,
Um, and to some, it might feel like it's a lazy way of doing animation because trees don't just sit pretty and not move. Do you know what I mean? But
mm,
also, it's like, well, why do they need to move? Like, we're not looking at them. That we know they're there, but we don't need to be like focusing on them. So what's the point? I think
yeah,
it's, I guess it's a work smarter, not harder kind of vibe.
yeah.
And the oh, go on, you carry on.
No, 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 no. I wasn't. I was just about to
I was
finish.
going to
Yeah,
say the only other thing that I learned from watching, these, and you comparing it to like Tarzan, I think there's a magic in 2D animation that I think we don't get in 3D animation
yeah,
these days. Like there's a lot of 3D animated films that I have and TV shows, etc., that hold a special place in my heart. But I think there's a certain like thing about 2D animation that just feels like it has a lot more sort of heart go into it. And I think there's a certain
yeah.
magic with 2D animation that you just don't get. And Ghibli is very much one of the only studios at the moment keeping that alive. A lot of people like I hate looking back at like old Disney films, like the original 101 Dalmatians film, right? And I watched a film not so long ago called The Illusionist, which very much reminded me of that 60s kind of Disney animation style that they had around the time of 101 Dalmatians. And just, it was so magical. It had a lot of heart to it. And I think Ghibli is one of the only studios that kind of are keeping that alive. Or, sorry, one of the more like mainstream studios that are keeping that alive. A lot of indies are still doing a lot of 2D animation and they're phenomenal.
Mm,
But yeah, I just think 2D animation seems to have been cast aside and it really shouldn't have been because I think it is the true meaning of what animation is to me. Like that
mm.
for me is what feels like pure animation. And I don't want to discredit any 3D animation by me saying that, but yeah.
No, I agree. I think that it feels like a craft. It feels like, and I know that there's so many talented 3D artists out there, and like Tyler says, we're not going to discredit those. I watch 3D films all the time. They're fabulous. They're really well made, very painstakingly well made. Just for me, like trying to emulate that and trying to work in a similar fashion, you get to know like techniques, you get to know like different ways of doing things, and you can just see what kind of work and blood, sweat, and tears goes into it. And I think that just animating anything or coming up with an original character or how that person's walk or characters' movement happens, like walk, gait, whatever it is, the distance of how many steps they're going to take and what's getting animated and like what comes from other old animation styles versus new animation styles. Like we were talking about the thing being animated in the scene that is going to be interacted with,
Yeah.
gave me like Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry vibes, like, really simplistic, old school cartoons that you're like, oh, that's the hammer he's going to pick up off the floor because all the background is all painted in a certain way. And I feel like it's good. It's an evolution of where we've been and where we're going in terms of like 2D
Yeah.
animation. And I thought that
It's kind of like
Ghibli was like a magnum opus of like animation coming together and going,
yeah.
this is what we can do with 2D animation, and I loved it.
It's kind of like, I think with like certain objects being in a different art style to like the backgrounds, it's almost like an animation's answer to sort of a depth of field. Do you know what I mean? So like when you obviously look through a camera lens, things will look a lot more in focus than things in the distance. And I think the point is that the objects that are, supposed to be like interacted with, I guess, in an animated film, those are the focal points. So everything else almost is meant to feel like it's out of focus. I think it's a very clever technique. It's kind of like a mimicking sort of real life in that regard. And I agree. I think this is very much like a magnum opus. And I think every time Miyazaki comes back, a lot of people mock him for coming out of retirement to make his films. But every time he does, he comes back and goes, boom, there you go. I don't think he's made a film, like he specifically hasn't directed a film that I don't think is phenomenal in terms of what he can do. Bless it, the guy's in his mid-80s. He's not getting younger. He really should settle down. But you can tell he still loves the craft, and he still wants to. He still has a story to tell. And I think the Boy and the Heron is not an exemption to that, like exception to that rule. Like it is a fantastic piece of art, and I do definitely encourage everyone to see it. So,
do you think now? I recently watched another animated film in a different animation style. It was a very, very good film. But it got me thinking of how Miyazaki sort of like came up with the process and how so the film I watched was The Beautiful Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget. And
I really need to watch it. I can't believe I'm not.
It was a great film. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was great. And then on Netflix, they've got like a 20-minute thing of like how they made the film and like different things that they have within it. And for me, like it got me thinking about like how Miyazaki does his process and how it, like in Chicken Run, they act out the scenes. They go, right, okay, this is how this person's going to have it. Like they're going to go down a shaft of like a event shaft of something. How would they crawl? How would they move? How would and you could see them like act it out in like for like the human characters or the other characters, and then they'd make it in claymation and do the sort of like stop motion animation side of it. And I feel like with what we do with like our drawing and animation, it's always like references. I feel like that in this day and age, now I don't know how they made the film, so I'm just sort of speculating. And I know that recently, well, in previous films, it was they draw an image, pull the page back, keep drawing, and that's how they would, go through the process. Am I right with that? That is correct?
Yeah. I think that a lot of it is still hand drawn.
Yeah. So in that sort of side of it, like ease of use, because I know he's been working on this film since I think it was 2016.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah. So like, did he have footage of people like acting out scenes in The Boy and the Heron and like drew over them and used them as a reference?
I don't think he rotoscopes.
Or do you think he like drew? Because like drawing something from like memory of like how someone walks is a difficult process. You have to get like something to have a reference, and it's.
I would maybe they do. I think a lot of it is just studying movement. Like I can't remember which particular Miyazaki film it is, but there's
one where she's putting her slippers on, isn't it?
Yeah, oh God, I love that. Yeah, but there's a particular film. I can't remember which one it is. I want to say it's Totoro, or is it Spirited Away? It's one of those two. Anyway, and he's based it on, I think, his goddaughter. Like
Mm.
a lot of her mannerisms is based on his goddaughter. So I think Miyazaki is, from what I reckon, he's just a chronic sort of people watcher. I think he studies like human movement because there's always a very human element to all of his films. Yes, a lot of them are very fantasy based, but they're all very human.
Yeah,
Like,
human stories.
none of them feel too, and obviously a lot of them are very far fetched, but none of them feel too far out of reach of kind of the realm of possibility within our like imaginations or anything like that. Like, I think there's probably a huge element of people watching and kind of studying the way people interact with each other, and people of all ages, because there's a lot of like children as well as adults in a lot of Ghibli films. I don't think they're necessarily rotoscope, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of use references and looked at the way people moved. It's yeah. But I think there's probably a lot of kind of not redrawing the whole thing every time.
Yeah.
Maybe just kind of draw, like having a stencil and moving certain limbs, or each time, because it would just take forever. I mean, I know that they used to have to do it that way.
Painstaking, so it takes
It'll
over
take
2
forever.
months,
Well, then,
Yeah.
but then if this film has really been in film at work for 8 years, then they probably have every
Taking the
single
time with it.
frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I,
it
but-
shows there's 8 years worth of work in that film.
Yeah. I got me thinking as well. When we were discussing like early, the beginning of this, like our hot takes and like what do we think of the film? And as we've just been talking about it, like, the worlds are very sort of like, out there and stuff. And I was like, yeah, one of my main hot takes of the film, like story wise, was I walked out that film with like 10,000 questions, being like, where was he? What was he doing? Why are the parakeets walking around? Like, just all these like different things. Like, what's Dave Bautista doing in there? Just all these different questions. And like, it was like testament. Like, you come away from films and you if it sticks with you afterwards and you ask the questions of like, where was it? What like spoilers. Obviously, we talked about the fire bit, but he goes to somewhere, and is it heaven? Is it hell? Is it somewhere in between? Is it something else entirely? I don't know, but I don't want to know.
No, I feel like
it's great.
There's a huge element, like a huge percentage of a Ghibli film that I think you have to allow your imagination to do a lot of the work as well. I like to think that Ghibli make a genre of animation that allows the consumer to kind of be imaginative and think about what you don't need all the answers, but the answers that you do or don't have make sense in the context of this movie, which I know probably sounds like a weird paradox, but yeah, I think The Boy and the Heron I knew it was going to be great. It is great, and I really want to watch it again with a subcast, but it actually is worth watching with dubs, and I think Ghibli are one of the very few sort of studios in terms of anime or thing like that get away with it. A lot of dubs can feel really lazy if you're watching sort of world cinema or world television. It can some of the dubs can feel really lazy and just kind of over the top, placed over the top and overacted a little bit. This particular film feels like the British cast or the English speaking cast belong. Like, it could have been recorded with them in mind. And so for that reason, I think it is worth watching. I loved every second of it, and I'd recommend it to everyone. So yeah. Any closing thoughts?
Go see that film. Support Studio
Just go and
Ghibli.
watch it.
Let the man make another film. It's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm off the base of this. I've seen Princess Mononoke. Is the other Ghibli film I've seen. I'm an amateur when it comes to
You should watch
these
House.
films. Yeah, I need to. I'm
You'd
moving
like
my way
House,
through them all. This just made me want to watch more films from Ghibli. It's
Good.
It's a beautiful film. Like I said initially, it's just a tray too long. It is very soothing. I am confused I was confused when I came out of it. I still very much am. I definitely would watch it again, and I recommend it to anyone. You know, if you like animation,
Fantastic.
go watch that film.
Go and watch that film.